Okay, everybody, I'm Tarhaka Mana Bay, and today we're going to be dealing with part 5. And I think it's time for us to start dealing with these taxes, man. The Internal Revenue Service, property taxes, taking taxes out your check, Social Security. Let's get some clarity on that today. So we're going to start off with your documents. And after that, we're going to go straight into the I.R.S. and your income tax, taking taxes out your check. And then we're going to start dealing with the property tax thing. And then we're going to have some stuff that I did back a while back. We're going to throw that in there and see how it goes. So y'all hold tight and let's get rolling. Okay? Okay, now this document is one I just finished posting this one up in my groups and stuff on Facebook. How to pay property taxes, about 1099-A. Now, keep in mind, what we want to do is understand, and because I've given you information in the previous videos about opting out of contracts and correcting your status in commerce before attempting to discharge debt. Okay, and that way you have substantial documentation to show that you are taking control of the corporate fiction. And so this is just simply another contract that you're opting out of. And these are your taxes. It says what you are not to know about property taxes is that your U.S. Treasury strawman account holds the title to your property and is liable for the taxes. Bottom line is your U.S. Treasury strawman account is paid the property taxes because it holds the master title to property and you live in it for free. Okay? The process, you get to pay the stub coupon from whomever with the full amount noticed on it. Then you mark and accept it for value, sign it and date it. You fill out your 1099-A. Your U.S. Treasury account is the lender who sent the bill is the borrower. Check box 5 on the 1099-A as no. This is payment. You are not going to get this money back. Complete the 1096 form. Block 4 and 5 are blank. Making the payment to the county treasurers, whomever sent it. Okay? Just want to go through briefly some of this to let you know how to go about getting this stuff done away with. This is outright fraud being performed on you in the country when they are double dipping. Complete an I.R.S. form 3949A and fax it and send it off to the CID. This also means that every share of sale for back taxes was a farce. Okay? All right. Let's go to the next document. Okay. Now let's deal with the good old Internal Revenue Service. This is a document for those who have an I.R.S. issues and everything that you could possibly need to know and use involving the Internal Revenue Service, involving foreclosures and mortgages. All of this stuff comes along with your secure party creditor package at newdataelimination.com. Also, student loan, child support, all of that comes along with that package. It states here, for those of you who have an I.R.S. issues, I know someone who wishes to remain anonymous but wants his story out. I can attest to the hassles he went through with the I.R.S. and know that it has been a long time since he has had to deal with them. Over a few years, he has accumulated an enormous amount of documentation and had repeated communication with the Internal Revenue Service. They eventually dragged him into the United States District Court, and during the trial, he changed his direction and used Title 15 instead of Title 26 in the Constitution. The case eventually stopped. His new contention was simple and in some ways similar to mine. charge concept. It is all about the bill, not the law. Title 15 relates to verified assessment. In other words, the collector must provide proof to validate the debt, and in any case involving debt must be held in judicial court. The concept is that evil ones have circumvented the Constitution and used their law, Title 26, as a way to confuse their victim. Tax law does not apply since I.R.S. is strictly a debt collection agency. Thusly, they are required to follow Title 15. The I.R.S. has no way to verify the debt, even if they can verify taxes. W-2s and 1099s are only evidence that someone has paid something, not that someone owes something. Okay, this is quite extensive. I'm not going to read all of that either, but I just want you to know that this is available along with our packages at newdebtelimination.com. And as you can see, this thing goes no. So you can have a field day in dealing with Internal Revenue Service. You know, and I don't understand how people are afraid. Let's go to the next document. Let's see exactly who the I.R.S. is. Okay.
Good evening, and welcome to Colorado Inside Out Live. I'm your host, Peter Boyles from KHOW Radio. Tonight, a very special guest with us in studio. He started out in the music business, including bringing Led Zeppelin to the States, and eventually moved a successful career in the film industry, was Bette Midler's manager, and produced the movies The Rose, Trading Places, one of my all-time favorites. He received 6 Academy Award nominations, a Tony, an Emmy, and several Golden Globes. But now he's shifted to a more political role, and tonight, he's here to discuss this film that's getting a lot of attention. It's entitled America, Freedom to Fascism. He's been with us on a radio show once before. We've never met, and we've been sitting in here talking. Aaron Russo is here. Thanks, man.
Nice to meet you.
You too. I mean, finally, we've been sitting here talking. He's going to be with us throughout the next hour taking your calls, but I'd like to set the film up, but we're going to take bits and pieces of the film. But we have a trailer for America, Freedom to Fascism. Before we begin, let's take a look.
What happens if your own government is using more force and more coercion on its own citizens for the purpose of achieving its political ends? Is that government engaging terrorism?
American people expect us to protect them and protect their civil liberties. I'm going to do that.
What is being sold to the American people today as Americanism, if you peel off the label, you find so much similarity to what we were fighting against when we were fighting communism and Nazism and fascism.
The government's now putting a national ID card together.
We will be carrying our papers, and they have recommended there be checkpoints throughout the country. Some type of physical proof, such as fingerprints or retinal prints, have to be on it.
Desires of the people really have no consequence. They go out and they vote. It doesn't make any difference which candidate they elect.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections?
Yes.
This is absolutely Orwellian. I mean, it's talking about Big Brother looking over your shoulder at absolutely everything we do.
There is no constitutional basis for a tax on the wages of Americans living and working in the 50 states of the Union. Period. End of argument.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
You caught me unprepared.
I'll come back.
Well, I don't want to do that.
There had to be a law, right?
Where is the law? Show me the law.
Why is the Supreme Court decision still the argument?
And I think we're finished.
They think it's the law, and they have all the guns. You know, it's an authoritarian approach.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
The latest technology for identifying people when they make purchases is actually the implantable chip that you can actually embed directly into human flesh.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? You will rule on that, mark my words.
A chip in everybody would be the universal monetary system par excellence, because there'd be no escape from it.
Americans have been taught to expect their salvation from government instead of recognizing government as the most dangerous threat they'll face in their lives.
It is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated by government against the working men and women of America.
It's organized crime. All you do is you call the Republicans the Genoveses, and you call the Democrats the Gambinos.
See the number on the screen. Let's get underway. 303-296-1253. What did you just see? How is this film being received? You tell me across the country.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Standing ovations. You know, it's very rare to see a movie ever get a standing ovation. We're getting standing ovations everywhere we go. People are going crazy for this movie. They love it because, you know, there's something wrong in America. People know there's something wrong, and this movie identifies what the real problem is. You know, everybody's so polarized in America today. Red states and blue states, Republicans and Democrats, liberal, conservative, whites against blacks, you know, and Jews and Arabs. And it's not about that, you know, and the movie explains why we're having so many problems in America today on so many levels, and who's behind it, and how the Democrats and Republicans are both controlled by the same people. And it doesn't matter which one's in office.
You showed one of my favorites, Edward Griffith.
Yes.
And The Creature from Jekyll Island. We've had him on the radio show twice. It's a lengthy read.
He's a great man.
He's an amazing guy.
Yes, he is.
And I'm sure many people know, or maybe they don't know, but the Federal Reserve Bank was created on an island off the coast of Georgia, Jekyll Island.
That's right.
Where prior to the income tax being brought into the country, these very powerful men meet, and they create the Federal Reserve.
Well, that's where it was conceived.
Right.
And it was actually approved by Congress during Christmas of 1913,
yeah.
when most senators were home with their families on Christmas vacation, you know, and it's totally illegal. It's totally against the Constitution. As a matter of fact, the Federal Reserve, the Central Bank of America, is one of the major planks of the Communist Manifesto.
Well, they were warned. I mean, Jefferson warns us, and they had watched national banks at work in Europe, and they had watched what was done during the rise of Napoleon, and they had watched what was called national banks, and Jefferson said, whatever you do, don't have a national bank.
Exactly. Did not want a central bank. He said something to the effect, if you ever allow the bankers to control the creation of currency in America, your children will end up homeless in the land their forefathers conquered.
Yeah,
you know, the banks are going to take over everything. I mean, the Federal Reserve is a private bank that the government in 1913 gave them the concession to make money for America. And when the government needs money now, they borrow it. See, here you have the government that has the legal authority to create money and not pay interest on it.
Right.
But when they created the Federal Reserve, they had now had to borrow money and pay interest on money, and that's why they imposed the income tax. They imposed a tax on your labor so you could pay interest to the bankers, right? It's incredible. People have no idea. And today the Federal Reserve is looked at as if it was this
great institution.
Great institution, highly regarded, you know, prestigious. They're a bunch of criminals. They're a bunch of criminals. They've taken over our government. He who makes the money makes the rules. And because these guys make the money,
golden rule.
It's the old golden rule.
Yeah.
And because these guys make the money, they control our government, both the Democrats and the Republicans. And it doesn't matter whether Hillary Clinton's in office or George Bush is in office, the same things are going to happen. There are minor differences, but essentially the same thing is going to happen.
I ask you this, and phones are already banked full, so we'll get to everybody. It's going to be a great show. When does it? I mean, the old, you know, the frog in the pot kind of analysis is always used. Right. But what do you say? I mean, people. I mean, there are historians that view this in sort of epochs and in moments, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then this happens. Where do you see our country today involved in 2 wars abroad? We were talking about every morning how much money is borrowed. We're talking about the role of the multinationals, the illegals in the country, Bush's seeming inabilities to do anything about either of those enormous, or all 3 of those enormous issues. And where does it go next?
Where does it go next? You know, I'm not a seer, but in my view, we're going towards martial law and complete totalitarian.
You believe that?
Yeah, I believe we're going into complete totalitarian government. I believe that the American people have lost their way. We've lost our freedoms. America, I call the movie Freedom to Fascism because the definition of fascism,
a corporate state,
is big government and big corporations working together to suppress and stifle the people.
Mussolini's corporate state.
Right, exactly. And that's what we have in America today. We have a fascist government here.
I'm frightened because of the multinationals.
Well, you should be frightened because these people are controlling our lives. You know, we're no longer in charge of our own lives. Everything we do today is done by. It's like believing in a sense that America from the beginning was supposed to be a democracy. You keep hearing
it's a republic.
Of course, it's a republic.
Sure.
It's a constitutional republic.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you ask 100 people on the street, what form of government is America supposed to be?
We have a democracy.
98% will tell you it's a democracy.
It's not.
And they don't get this. A democracy, 51% control 49%. It's tyranny of the majority. I wouldn't want to be part of the 49%. In our constitutional republic, 99% of the people couldn't take away the rights of 1%. You have rights because you were born. You had God-given human rights. They're your rights.
Intrinsic rights as a citizen.
Intrinsic rights. And the government can't take them away as if they're a privilege.
Where did this... I mean, I've looked at your career since you were on a radio show. I mean, you got this remarkable career in show business. A lot of stuff was coming your way.
Yes.
What happened?
What do you mean? What?
No. I mean, why did you become... I mean, I'm serious question. Was there a series of events or an issue that happened and you went, what am I watching here?
Sherry Peel Jackson. She is an ex-IRS agent, CPA, fraud examiner. She was working for the I.R.S. She was on the fast track to success there. She was doing very well, had received numerous awards for all of the work she did. And she realized that there is no law and that the biggest fraud was the I.R.S.
I tried to be the best at whatever I did. So when I got to the I.R.S., I hit the ground running. My first year in 1988, I got the Fraud Award. It's a big shaped in Georgia award for fraud. But I got numerous awards, and my biggest one is from the I.R.S. commissioner himself. Back in 1995, it was Fred T. Goldberg. One of the things that I wanted to tip you off on as far as what the I.R.S. does, before I get into the story, they had, I don't know what they're doing now, but they had what's called a Market Segment Specialization Program, or MSSP. They would take different market segments, like ministers, and try to figure out how much money you were underreporting. Let's take beauticians, for example. I'm going to audit her beauty shop. She owns the shop, and she has some people working there. Based on the assumption that the IRS has that people don't report all of their money, but they like to put all their expenses on there. So granted, all her expenses are on the tax return, and I figure out how many bottles of this and that she bought, I can calculate a dollar figure. So I'll tell Sophia, after it's all over and we're buddy-buddy, I just shock her, and I say, well, guess what? It looks like, based on my calculations, that you really brought in $80,000, but you have $50 on the tax return. So here, you owe the IRS back $30,000. What would she do? She would sign off on it. I only had 2 cases in 7.5 years where somebody actually bucked at me. People are so afraid. The government and the media have gotten you guys so afraid of the IRS that you don't even buck them. Now, mind you, she might have left some money off. Maybe there was several times where she just didn't report the cash. And maybe that's why. Maybe she has no idea how much she, quote unquote, underreported. Maybe that was it. But they always acquiesce. They got one, anybody own a laundromat, they have one that will calculate based on your water bill how many loads were washed at your laundromat. And the point to all of this is what they do to people, and people just acquiesce to it. When I quit the IRS in 1995, and after maybe a year of being Jim Cleaver and realizing that that was just not me, I hung my shingle, which in accounting terms or business terms is you start your own business. Now, you know that picture of Uncle Sam, the one that says Uncle Sam wants you? I used that same picture, and I had it really big, and I says, Uncle Sam wants your money, but I'm a former IRS agent, and I'm going to show you how to get it back. You know, the people came running. And then these people start coming to me saying, I keep hearing that we're not supposed to pay tax. Or I keep hearing that the tax law is a fraud. And like I said, I was raised differently. I never would look at that person and say, you're a cuckoo. I wouldn't even think it. It was like, okay, you know, in this back burner back here, I would think to myself, okay, there's some people out there that actually think that the income tax doesn't apply to us, or it's a fraud, or it's being misapplied. But I didn't do anything about it because, remember, I'm rolling along with my little businesses and whatnot. So one night maybe in early June, one of my pastor clients called. It was night. It was about 9 o'clock at night. And she said, you know what? I think it was maybe a Wednesday night, after her Wednesday night service. She said, I've got this parishioner that just keeps bugging me about this income tax. She's talking about that we're not liable for the income tax, and she wants to talk to you. Can I give this lady your telephone number? And I said, okay. So maybe about 10 minutes later, this lady called me. She said, I have a question for you. Are we supposed to pay income tax or not? And I said, okay. Do you want the cuffed answer or do you want the real answer? She said, I want the real answer. I said, well, I really don't know. You know, even though I'm a former I.R.S. agent, I haven't done the research, but I hear that there's a credible body of evidence out there that says that we don't owe the income tax. I was okay. I mean, I took the information. I was sitting there listening like, okay. And, you know, I said, okay, this lady had a lot of information. I don't know where she got it from. So a few weeks later, she called me again and she said, Miss Jackson, remember that information I told you on the phone? It's in the USA Today. Pull it up on the internet. Okay, so I got the USA Today. It was July 7th, 2000. And it says, Dear we the people, most citizens are not required to file an income tax return. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution is a fraud. And if you file, you waive your Fifth Amendment rights. I said, okay, that's some of the stuff she was saying. Now, this is a lot of reading. But I kept reading because I was very interested, you know, being a CPA and into fraud and all that. I wanted to see what was going on. So here in the third column, it says no one has been able to collect the $50,000 reward offered by Bill Conklin to anyone that can identify the section of the Internal Revenue Code that makes a typical worker liable for the income tax. I'm serious about winning this $50,000. Okay, so it's at my desk. Basically, I just shoved everything off my desk and got the codes out, the regulations out, the tax guide I got on the internet to look at the Cornell University site, all these different things, and I started researching. And 2 weeks later, I said to myself, oh my goodness, we have a problem here. It doesn't look like I'm going to win this money. And I was sitting there at my desk thinking, this thing is a fraud. 2 weeks it took me to sit there and realize that. I didn't just look at the positive, I looked at the negative, I looked at the I.R.S. site. All these things are going on. This thing is a fraud. Being a CPA and a former I.R.S. agent, I sat there at the desk, you know, I was by myself, and all these thoughts started going through my head. The first thought was, now I finally open up the codes and regulations. Because see, at the I.R.S., they trained us with these little guides. We didn't use the codes and regulations. We would get one of these, and you would have to read it, understand it, and pass this little test. And all these little guides that I got, I read them, and I made A's on all my tests. And I thought, and I guess the rest of the agents in training thought, that the information that was in here was the same that was in those thick codes and regulations. But it's not necessarily the same. The things that are in these training manuals are not necessarily the same thing as in the codes and regulations. I learned that in my studying. In the time that I was doing the research, I also learned about the Pocket Commission. And I'm going to let this go around the room, but y'all got to give it back. This is the outside that I purchased of the Pocket Commission that I had. And before I left, I had the sense of mind to make a copy. This is the little badge I used to flip out at people and say, give me your books and records. Give me your bank statements. Give me all your credit cards, you know. And, you know, people, okay, here. You know, even the counties, I go to the county, do it. I go just about anywhere and flip this little thing out and get whatever I want. You know, there's a lot of power nuts out there doing that, guys. Y'all know it. Half of you already know about it. There's an enforcement pocket commission, and there's a non-enforcement pocket commission. And I started looking back at this thing. It has SER, Southeast Region. First of all, I'll read it. It has my picture up here, and it says, Sherry Jackson, whose signature and picture appear above, is duly commissioned as Internal Revenue Agent and has authority to perform all duties conferred upon such officers under all laws and regulations administered by the Internal Revenue Service, including the authority to investigate and require and receive information as to all matters relating to such laws and regulations. And it has SER and some other numbers and an A. And based on this Internal Revenue Manual, A means administrative. So I'm an administrative clerk out there on the front lines. And I'm an administrative clerk with a non-enforcement pocket commission. Okay, so I'm starting to get angry here. Starting to think about all that. I had to take bribes and get little tape recorders taped to my body and the little microphones on me and go in and take bribes from people. But, you know, thinking about stuff like that, you know, what they got me out here, and I'm thinking I really have authority? And this is administrative, non-enforcement pocket commission. That was one of the other things I thought about. And then I thought about, and I found out, this is one of the, another issue, a levy versus a notice of levy. This is something that I didn't deal with a lot because I was an agent, and I just assessed the tax. I wasn't a tax collector. I just assessed it. So this is a notice of levy. And someone said, hey, this is a notice of levy. This is what the banks get or your job or whatever. They said, look at the back of it. So I'm looking at the back of this notice of levy, and it says, Section 6331, levy and distraint. And then it says B and C. And I'm thinking, it starts off with B? What happened to A? So I looked up A. And here's A. And it says, levy may be made upon the accrued salary or wages of any officer, employee, or elected official of the United States, the District of Columbia, or any agency or instrumentality of the United States or the District of Columbia by serving a notice of levy. I'm thinking, but that's not most people. That's not the person that works at AT&T or Bell South or Coca-Cola. That's not most people. Aren't people noticing that the A isn't on here? Aren't they curious about it? Why are they doing this? All this is going through my head during this period of time, then I'm realizing that there's a rat in the camp. That's what I call it. But this is the straw that broke the camel's back. The Federal Reserve is not federal. How many of you did not know before today that the Federal Reserve isn't federal? If you didn't, don't be shy. If you didn't know before today that the Federal Reserve isn't federal, raise your hand. Most people don't know that. 9 out of 10 people that I asked off the street don't understand that the Federal Reserve is a non-auditable private banking cartel. They are collecting $36 million an hour in interest from the American people. $36 million an hour in interest from the American people. My children, my 2 children, were born $86,000 in debt based on the national debt. Now, why am I going to take away from those children to give to somebody that is going to be born in 2030? That's not going to happen. So that was my decision. It was very easy. You know, you think about stuff like fear. Oh, the I.R.S. is going to get you. They're going to take your stuff. That's not important to me. Stuff's not important to me. My children are important to me. I'm one of those mothers that will roll up her sleeves with one leg and try to whoop you if you mess with my children. And I think that a lot of mothers are like that. So this is what my decision was. And I went on and started educating people. One of the things that people asked me once I made this decision and started talking about it, how are we going to run the country without the income tax? I don't know how much Dan got into it, but the Grace Commission report that Ronald Reagan put out in 84, says that none of the money collected in income tax goes towards running the country. But the bottom line is it's not going towards running the country, so you patriotic people out there, you've been fooled. Beardsley Rummel, he was Federal Reserve Chairman back in 1946, did a speech before the American Bar Association. The title of his speech was Taxes for Revenue Are Obsolete. Within the body of this report, he says that the taxes, the income taxes for redistribution of wealth. What is redistribution of wealth? What is that? That's taking from me that I've worked hard for and giving it from somebody else to somebody else. Shouldn't I have the right to redistribute my wealth if I want to? Another question that they ask me is, how come I haven't heard this on TV or on the radio or in the newspaper? Well, sweetie, the simple answer to that is the same people who own the television stations and the newspapers and the radio stations are the same people who are involved with the Federal Reserve. And here is a little statement that says that it only requires 5% ownership to significantly influence the media. Rockefeller is one of the original shareholders of the Federal Reserve. As early as 1963, the House Banking Subcommittee reported that Rockefeller, through Chase Manhattan Bank, controlled 5.9% of the stock in CBS and the bank and gained interlocking directorates with ABC. I went all the way through high school, all the way through college, all the way through testing for the CPA, and all this I.R.S. training and didn't hear about any of this. You think they want this information out here? For you guys to eat up and chew up and find out what's really going on? I don't think so. Now, another one. Why don't we just tell our elected officials about this? And to make a really long story short, the We the People Foundation, the same people that put out this ad, put together a hearing. And these 40 researchers were going to ask the I.R.S. and the DOJ these questions, and we're going to have this big meeting in Washington called the Truth and Taxation Hearings. Okay? So we got together with 537 questions. So we sent them the 537 questions so they could research and have the answers, and what did they do? They reneged on coming. They signed off on it, but they reneged on coming. So you all didn't get to hear the truth. We went on and had the hearings anyway, put it on CD, marched around Washington, giving it to all 535 congressmen and senators. Please look at this information. We got stupid responses back like, thank you for visiting our offices in Washington. The next time you come to Washington, please visit us again. They don't care. Your presidents don't care. Another one that they ask me, or they'll say something like, well, this just sounds like it's some kind of conspiracy theory. Y'all hear that a lot? Okay. But tell me this, what's the difference between a conspiracy and a strategy? Don't you understand that this is all by design? All this black, white stuff. You're white, I'm black, you know. You're Democrat, I'm a Republican. You know, y'all heard of divide and conquer before, right? Why y'all letting them do it to us? While I'm sitting up here arguing with this man about what his great-great-great-granddaddy did to mine, there's this big old fence closing in around us. And while I'm sitting here wasting time and he's sitting here telling me why he doesn't know, we need to put our heads together and figure out how to get out of this fence that these people are building around us. Am I right? Yeah. That's what we got to be. Divide and conquer, we can't let that work anymore. It's been working all these years. Then we need to get together and understand. First of all, you need to understand what is going on with your money. You work hard. It's like we're a hamster on a wheel. This country started out with taxation without representation. Where are we now? How did we get back to where we started? We got lazy and comfortable. Get out your comfort zone. I never tell people to file a tax return. I never tell them not to file. I never tell people to pay taxes, and I never tell them not to pay. What I tell people is to do your own research, do your due diligence, and decide whether or not you're going to be a slave or get off the plantation. That's your choice. So in essence, you're wasting time. As long as you continue to feed the monster's going to grow. They're going to laugh in your faces. Any kind of cause that you have, anything that you're trying to do in your life concerning getting things back on track with our country, the way it's supposed to be, you're going to get laughed at because you continue to give them the money to do whatever it is they're doing to us. A lot of people don't care. A lot of people get the money taken out of their checks and they actually think they're getting, oh, I get back $3,000 every year. They don't take anything from me. I said, sweetie, look at your W-2. They took $14,000. They gave you back $3,000 of your own money. Oh. But the point is, if each of us understands where we are, who we are, and tries to do something about it, then we're going to get somewhere. This is a great country, but it's off track. And who's going to get it back on track? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, gang, let's deal with our second stanza of our documents. We're going to run some more of that. And this time, let's deal a little more closely with the Internal Revenue Service. A lot of people don't know that the Internal Revenue Service is a proper corporation. And let's take a look at their documentation. Okay, and after that, then we're going to be going into another short video plug. And on this video plug here, we're going to deal with property tax scandal. Okay? So y'all sit tight and we'll be right back. Okay? Okay. Here we go. Certificate of Incorporation. Internal Revenue Tax and Audit Service Incorporated. Now this is an old document. This is a snapshot clearly showing you that they are private for profit corporation. And you have to get a hold of this so you can read it for yourself. I'm not going to read all this stuff because you know, it's a sold document. I just want you to know, here it is. That's there you go. You're looking at it right there. This is when the Internal Revenue Service done the deed. Okay? All right. Certificate of Incorporation of the Internal Revenue Tax and Audit Services Incorporated. All right, let's move on. All right, here we go again. Let's get a little breakdown. I'm not going to read it all because it's long. A thorough review of available 31 U.S.C. sections, executive order of the Secretary of the Treasury, United States of America, disclosed the following facts. Okay, well, what did they disclose? 31 U.S.C. is designed the U.S. Code section for tax regulations and administration of the U.S. Treasury Department operations. Subsequent regulatory administrative activities are covered by Treasury orders from the Treasury Secretary. Several sections within 31 U.S.C. state explicitly that authority may only be delegated to subordinates by the Treasury Secretary through Executive Treasury orders. Public Law 94455 in 1976 further clarified this, specifically requiring all regulations in the Internal Revenue Code sections be amended to reflect that only the Treasury Secretary had the authority to take enforcement actions and carry out administration of all Treasury functions, and that any delegation of authority had to be by Treasury order. A close review of 31 U.S.C. disclosed that the Internal Revenue Service, a private corporation, is not shown as a division bureau of any part of the U.S. Treasury Department. All this can be looked up anytime on 1stgov.31 U.S.C. Chapter 3 does not list the I.R.S. as an agency or part of the Treasury Department. 31 U.S.C. Subtitle 4, Section 9101 does not show the I.R.S. as a government-owned corporation under government corporations. 31 U.S.C. Subtitle 1, Chapter 9, Section 901 does not list the I.R.S. as an authorized agency. The Internal Revenue Service lists its authority for operation as Internal Revenue Code Section 7801 in many of the I.R.S. publications. IRC 7801 does not say one word about the I.R.S., only the ATF, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the U.S. Justice Department. The IRC is not statutory law in any case and cannot serve to authorize any agency. Section 7801 and Section 7802. Section 7803 of the IRC are administrative sections added by the I.R.S. Special Counsel and are not supported by CFR and are not law. Only CFR or USC is law, which are promulgated by acts of the U.S. Congress through public law passages. Now I want to add that I found out a long time ago, because if you would get an old phone book, if you still have one around the house, open it up and look in the blue. It's in the blue page. It should be right at the front of your book or either in the back. And all of the government agencies are listed, but you won't find the Internal Revenue Service listed there. However, if you go to the yellow pages and you look up FedEx, UPS, and then you'll find the I.R.S. listed over there, the yellow pages. But nevertheless, we have this document too, and that comes along with everything that you have, and it gives you a complete breakdown on all this information. It's thoroughly, you're thoroughly furnished. Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, Washington, D.C. There's a letter there. It says, let me see, read a little bit of this. Dear Mr. This is in response to your January 4, 1996 letter asking how you can tell what category a particular regulation falls. Regulations are authorized by Internal Revenue Code Section 7805. They constitute the primary source of guidelines on the regulations that have carefully been classified into three broad categories: legislative, interpretive, and procedural. Okay, this is interesting here. I hope that this information will be helpful to you sincerely. It says the section, okay, I got to get down and read this right here. Okay, but the Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, Washington, D.C. Oh, okay, so we're not. okay, all right. Let's move on, y'all. Okay, now let's deal with the good old Internal Revenue Service. This is the document for those who have an I.R.S. issues, and everything that you could possibly need to know and use involving the Internal Revenue Service, involving foreclosures and mortgages. All of this stuff comes along with your Secure Party Creditor package at NewDataElimination.com. Also, student loan, child support, all of that comes along with that package. It states here, for those of you who have an I.R.S. issues, I know someone who wishes to remain anonymous but wants his story out. I can attest to the hassles he went through with the IRS and know that it has been a long time since he has had to deal with them. Over a few years, he has accumulated an enormous amount of documentation and had repeated communication with the Internal Revenue Service. They eventually dragged him into the United States District Court, and during the trial, he changed his direction and used Title 15 instead of Title 26 in the Constitution. The case eventually stopped. His new contention was simple and in some ways similar to my charge concept. It is all about the bill, not the law. Title 15 relates to verified assessment. In other words, the collector must provide proof to validate the debt, and in any case involving debt must be held in judicial court. The concept is that evil ones have circumvented the Constitution and used their law, Title 26, as a way to confuse their victim. Tax law does not apply since IRS is strictly a debt collection agency. Thusly, they are required to follow Title 15. The IRS has no way to verify the debt, even if they can verify taxes. W-2s and 1099s are only evidence that someone has paid something, not that someone owes something. Okay, this is quite extensive. I'm not going to read all of that either, but I just want you to know that this is available along with our packages at newdebtelimination.com. And as you can see, this thing goes no. So you can have a field day in dealing with the Internal Revenue Service. You know, and I don't understand how people are afraid. Let's go to the next document. Let's see exactly who the IRS is. Okay. Okay, for those people who are having taxes taken out of your check, income tax, which deals with your W-2s, W-4s, and those of you who are having Social Security taxes taken out of your check and who desire to cash your check for the gross amount, which is what you are supposed to be doing. When do I stop paying Social Security tax? Of all the taxes that come out of your paycheck, none may be more inescapable. And those who go to Social Security, whether you are salaried or self-employed, you must generally contribute throughout your entire working life. There are, however, a few exceptions, which we'll cover here. Key takeaways. Most American workers have to pay Social Security taxes for as long as they are working. There are a few exceptions, including members of certain religious groups and some types of non-resident aliens. Federal employees hired before 1984 may also be exempt because they pay into a separate retirement system. Okay, y'all got that? Basic Social Security withholding. I'm not going to read on that. We won't get down here to the part to say who don't have to pay. That's what I want to know. How earners beyond a certain point, as mentioned above, workers may, making big bucks, pay on only a portion of their income. After the income has a certain level, their Social Security withholding stops for the year, officially known as the wage base limit. The threshold changes every year. Okay, keep that in mind. For example, the 2019 wage limit for paying FICA taxes was increased to $132,900 from $128,400 in the year prior. Notes Mark Hepner, founder and president of the Index Fund Advisor Incorporated in Irvine, California, and the Option Index Fund, the 12-step recovery program for active investors. Members of some religious groups, some workers are exempt from paying Social Security taxes if they're employees in the second order organization they belong officially decline to accept Social Security benefits for retirement, disability, death, or Medicare. To receive the exemption, members of such group must apply using the I.R.S. Form 40 and 29. A number of restrictions apply, including the group must have been in existence since 1950. The group must have provided its members with a realistic standard of living since that time. Okay, and this list goes on. However, when do I stop paying Social Security tax? This comes along with your package as well. Okay? All right. Let's move. Okay. Let's deal with a document called the Matrix and the U.S. Constitution. Now, you should be able to get a copy of this document by simply going on to Google and typing it in, the Matrix and the U.S. Constitution. It should come up. And I brought it on here because I want you to pay close attention to page 10 on this particular document. Page 10. Okay, let's see about page 10 here. The paper and that ruling gave it. Okay, let me explain how the court arrived at this ruling, because these are not ignorant men. On every form you file to receive government benefits, and even the voter registration form, there's a question that asks, are you a United States citizen, yes or no? And everyone serves the yes answer, didn't you? Now, look up the definition of a United States citizen. In a reputable law dictionary, you will discover that United States citizen, that phrase is named to identify a corporate fiction. Clever, isn't it? Okay, we all know that. But let's get on down to the meat of the table. Okay, the sovereign states that have been abolished in 1790 by the abortion of Article 1 of the Statute at Large was converted all of the sovereign states into federal districts and gave the federal government lawful jurisdiction everywhere, in consideration of the fact that the federal government is a corporation, and that the corporation can lawfully own other corporations. And all the American subjects to be educated have admitted under penalty of perjury that they are corporations. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the corporate federal government. See how sneaky and tricky lawyers can be? And all the more reason why lawyers should never be allowed to serve in government or in judgment of us. All right, let's get on down in this thing. All right, we're going to start down here. Under our corporate governments, no sovereign can lawfully be tried or convicted of any statutory crime. I recently discovered how to avoid prosecution under the trust when a sovereign is taken before a corporate prosecuting attorney or judge. Now remember, now look up the word sovereign so you know what that means. We're not talking about a sovereign citizen. There is no such thing as a sovereign citizen. How you gonna be? How you be a man and a leader and a king and a servant at the same time? You can't do that. Okay. First, the sovereign must inquire if we are on the record, and if not, insist upon it. Say nothing, sign nothing, and answer no questions until you are convinced that the proceedings are being recorded. Okay, step one. All right, step two. All a sovereign has to say for the record is, I am the beneficiary of the trust, and I am appointing you as my trustee. Now, who he talking to? He's talking to your judge. Thirdly, the sovereign then directs his trustee to do his bidding. As my trustee, I want you to discharge this matter I'm accused of and eliminate the record. Okay? All right. All right. Fourthly, if the sovereign suffers any damages as a result of his arrest, he can direct the trust compensate him from the proceeds of the court by saying, I wish to be compensated for X amount of dollars in redemption. This statement is sufficient to remove the authority and jurisdiction from any prosecuting attorney or judge. The accused will be immediately released from custody with a check, license, or claim he identifies as a damage. It doesn't matter what the action involves or how it is classified by the corporate law as a civil or criminal action. It works every time. Okay, I just want to go over that, and this is our last document for the day. I wish I could go through long, but it'll make this video too long. I'm trying to shorten them up and let you know what is available, and I'll give you some eyesight into what we're dealing with and what we use when we are dealing with this corporate United States of America. Okay? All right, that'll conclude that, and now we're going to be going into the next video. Okay? Y'all sit tight.
One of the kinds of taxes in America that really represents a scandal long overdue to be part of the national agenda for change is the property tax. Here in the United States, we use a whole bevy of different taxes to pay for what our federal, state, and local governments do for us. Today I'm going to focus on what the local tax system is. That is, by local I mean towns, cities, villages. How do they pay for the things they're supposed to do, like public schools, local police and fire departments, health care, and so on, maintaining pollution-free streams and the public parks and all of that? The answer is our local communities basically rely on one kind of tax more than any other. It's called the property tax. And it's very interesting. Here's how it works. Every city or town has something called a tax assessor. And that person's job is to go around and measure the value of homes, land, stores, factories in the community, property, real property it's called, and then to advise the city fathers and mothers so they can decide how much tax rate to apply to that property. And the person who owns the property is required to pay a tax on the value of the property every year. And that's how cities and towns raise a good bit of the money they need to provide all those local services we all rely on. But here's the interesting thing. It's called a property tax, but it shouldn't, because it doesn't apply to all property, and therein lies the scandal. It applies to some property, but not to others, and there's no reason for this. Let me explain. The first kind of property that's taxed is land. The second kind, structures built on land, a home, a store, an apartment house, a factory. And then other kinds of property are sometimes included, an automobile, a boat, even sometimes the inventory of a business. So those kinds of property are subject to tax. Every year the owner pays a small percentage of the value of that property. And that's what the city and town or village use for public education, fire, police, and so on. Here's the scandal. There are other types of property, and they're not taxed. Let me explain. If you sell a house, let's say it's worth $100,000, and you take the $100,000 and instead of a house, you use it to buy stocks and bonds. You had $100,000 of property before in the form of a house. You have $100,000 of property now in the form of stocks and bonds. But here comes the trouble. What's the property tax on stocks and bonds levied by cities, towns, and villages in the United States? Zero. Nothing. We don't have a property tax. We have a property tax that exempts what is called intangible property, property you can't touch, like a piece of land or a structure. We don't tax it. We did as a nation in the past in many cities and towns. If you go back far enough, you'll discover that there were property taxes on stocks and bonds. I remember learning that the first tax ever levied in the state of Connecticut was on the stocks and bonds of a canal that was built way back in the early days of that state. But we don't do it anymore, hardly anywhere in America. And that's a scandal. Two reasons. One, the people who own most of the stocks and bonds in the United States are, of course, our richest citizens. Most of us cannot afford a house or a home, let alone stocks and bonds. If American working people have any wealth, it's their home. Very few have a significant amount of stocks and bonds. Those are highly concentrated, which means a property tax that exempts stocks and bonds is a property tax that exempts the richest amongst us, for which there is no justification. Second point, think about it. The wealth in this country in the form of stocks and bonds is in the many, many trillions. A tiny rate of taxation, 1%, half of 1%, would generate a huge amount of revenue for this country at a time of economic difficulty. Very valuable. And it would come only from the richest, and it would take a very small percentage of their stocks and bonds. It is a scandal that we have not addressed this unjust property tax system long ago.
Property. Noun. A thing or things belonging to someone. So, if property truly belongs to someone, they should not have to pay someone else to possess it, right? That would be renting, not owning property. So then what is property tax but extortion? That's the question that Jay Noon is currently asking as he is battling over his property. Tax-funded busybodies in the town of Palmer, Massachusetts are trying to steal his home after claiming he was required to cough up $23,000 in Federal Reserve notes for owning property. Jay has refused to vacate his property or give in to the city's ransom, and so far, so good. Jay, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hey, how you doing?
Outstanding. Now, I just want to say it's really amazing that you're in a position, you have put yourself in a position to protest property taxes so effectively and to have scored such a major victory. How did you come into this position, and what led you to be so passionate about property taxes in the first place?
Well, as you may know, and my father never got me a Social Security number, and I had teachers in high school and in school saying, "Oh my God, you won't be able to survive without a Social Security number," and it's made things a little tougher. So I've had to work a little harder and learn how to do things out of the system. So that my passion probably built from that, and also from, my father's very freedom-minded and taught us, all of us boys, about freedom and liberty from a very young age. So, but with the land, I don't have a commercial mortgage with my house. Actually, I have basically a promissory note, a handshake. The guy I bought the house from is who I pay the note to, pay the loan to. And in commercial mortgages, which all of them are pretty much fraud anyways, as we're finding out. Yep. But in commercial mortgages is where the contract is, where people agree to pay this property tax.
So you never signed a mortgage, you never took on that agreement. That's the first element. But they ended up charging you property taxes anyway, to the point where it got to $23,000. How did that happen? How does that work in Massachusetts?
Well, I don't know. I never participated in that system. See, I never paid the bill from, bill number one. I never even paid it. And in fact, when they send you the tax bill, it says, it's all capital letters, and it says Noon Joseph F. Well, that's not the way I write my name. But when they send you the water bill or the sewage bill, for me, it says Joseph, capital J, rest lowercase, middle initial F, and then Noon, capital N, the rest of it's lowercase. And so that Noon Joseph F in all capital letters is essentially a trust that they create, from what I've found out.
So no, I mean, that sounds like a technicalitarian argument almost, but you're saying that in order to impose property taxes upon you, they created a fictional legal entity and attached it to you and your property. Is that right?
Exactly. What they do is they essentially make you a surety for that fictional entity, just like a driver's license. When you sign on a driver's license, the name's in all capital letters, and they create this fictitious persona or legal entity. It makes you a surety for the name in all capital letters, a trust. Okay,
so now this is the city of Palmer, Massachusetts, actually levying or trying to levy the tax, correct?
Yes. The town of Palmer, they call themselves. And one very important thing here is that these towns, these municipal corporations, are not governments. They are municipal corporations that are acting as governmental, AL on the end of governmental agencies that are essentially collection agencies to collect the bankruptcy debt that FDR, created through or set up through his stacking of the Supreme Court and Erie versus Tompkin, 1939. So they're collecting a bankruptcy debt, and they're using property tax to do it. And the property tax exists because the states are using the property as surety to prop up their bond rating, and the tax is actually like the interest on the surety lien or something. That's all still a little fuzzy because it ain't like nobody will tell you what's going on.
Okay, so they send you this bill for $23,000. They say, if you don't pay this, we're coming after you. And that we're coming after you, that date was, that was a couple of weeks ago now.
That was June 28th.
June 28th. And on June 28th, you decided you were going to sit in on your property, and you were going to resist, and you were going to say that they were threatening at that point. That was when we're going to come and get them, is we're going to come and remove you and confiscate your property at that point, correct?
Yeah, that was the eviction notice. But actually, a little more interesting, on June 27th, the day before, at about 9:30 in the morning, the chief of police, a guy named Robert Frederick, showed up, Palmer chief of police. And he told me to go to the court and ask for a stay of eviction. Now, when they had the eviction hearing, I never entered the jurisdiction of the court. I did not cross that railing and step on that vessel. You'll see in these courtrooms there's a railing that represents a ship's railing. So you're actually leaving the land and entering like maritime law when you walk into these courts, these legislative courts.
Or at least submitting to the jurisdiction of the court, and you're making the case that you didn't submit. But so they can't. What happened? They never actually came to evict you, did they?
Nope, they never came to evict me. The day or two after the eviction hearing, I sent in a petition to land court under the Declaratory Judgment Act because the land court issued a judgment against me a month before the hearing, but the judgment isn't even signed. So in my petition, I asked them, who is the judgment against? The state-created entity or the living, breathing man? And the town's lawyer, the only thing I got was a rebuttal of that, about 3 pages long. The town's lawyer sent basically begging land court to deny my petition against, wondering who the judgment is against.
So this is ongoing legally, supposedly, as they try to collect some kind of property tax from the corporation of the town of Palmer tries to evict you from your lawfully owned property. But this is a huge victory. I mean, this is incredible. They said, hey, we're gonna come evict you, and then because you just say you put your foot down, you keep your money that you would have had to pay for this property tax that is criminal in the first place, and you get to stand your ground, keep your property, and stay free. I mean, as free as you can be in Palmer, Massachusetts, but still, there were a lot of people there supporting you. There were a lot of people that came out and harassed the city officials, possibly embarrassing them into submission. But thank you for your work. Thank you for putting yourself in this position and for challenging so many people's concept of property. Is there anything people can do to further support your cause?
Well, yeah, they can stand up for their own property. My cause is everybody's cause. I'm not doing this just for me. This is being done for everyone. And one real important point is I served the town of Palmer with an affidavit in hand to the chief of police stating that I'm not a 14th Amendment created U.S. citizen, that I'm a natural citizen, which, there's a lot going on about that, but U.S. citizens cannot own property.
Well, keep up the good fight, Jay. I'm sorry, that's all the time we have for tonight, but it was a real honor having you on the show. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think we got Steve with us now. Steve, you there?
I'm here.
All righty, he made it. He made it.
Well, I was trying to log into, I guess, what was the other line, and then it dumped me and told me to come over here and do it. So.
Okay. Well. Hey, welcome aboard here. We were just keeping the ball in the air for you. So this is a long-awaited show. Everybody's been bugging me, and everyone's got their popcorn and they're sitting on the edge of their seat. So.
Popcorn.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's supposed to be milk duds, man.
Milk, that's right. I'm with you. I sit corrected. Milk does. So, okay, we warmed them up. They're salted and buttered, the audience. Told them this whole deal with property taxes is rebutting the presumption for commercial use. We are not using our property for commercial use because this is where we eat, sleep, poop, and play.
There you go.
I got to clean that up. We eat, sleep, poop, and play. You cannot tax this. So I'll hand it over to you. And what do you got to add to that?
Well, technically, it's a substantive right to have some place to live, and you can't tax rights. Is pretty much what it boils down to.
Right.
Bear with me just for a second. I'm trying to get this light out here on the porch so I can hang out and smoke and read my stuff, you know.
There you go, living the dream there, buddy.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. Okay, light on. There we go. Bingo. Now I am happening. The command post is underway.
Cool. This information needs to get out, stop the oppression and the tyranny. So,
let me see. First off, man, I ain't a teacher. I'm not an instructor at this crap. I'm just an everyday guy who realized that something was really wrong, that our socialist commie in the state of Florida was somehow being able to steal properties, people's homes from them, and I don't know, 6-7 years ago, I had a friend of mine, that people like some kids I grew up with, basically, or kids, I guess, and their mother had to sell this lakefront home that they grew up on and lived on because she couldn't afford to pay the property taxes, and kind of got me going there and said, there's something wrong with this. This just doesn't make any sense if that's the way it works in land of the free and home of the brave. So I started doing some research here and looking through the Florida statutes, the Florida Constitution. I got turned on to the Florida Administrative Code, which was a great help. That's the key, is the government code in your state. That usually lays out the procedures and all the details of who's got to sign what, who's got to do everything in order to have these so-called assessments and returns and everything all done correctly to get them on the assessment roll. So I took several years to go through all this stuff and try to figure out and put heads or tails together. And what I came up with here was a lot of really great stuff, mainly in the state constitution. But as what I did, I just kind of laid out some notes here, some case laws and things I found here in Florida when I was doing the research here. And I guess the big key here to understand is, first thing is your property, in order for it to be taxable, must be exercising a taxable privilege. In other words, you must be conducting some type of business upon it or making some kind of profit that would be considered to come under what would be considered to be a calling, privilege. What's the other words they use?
And that's only under license, right? Yeah, that's only under license, because I don't want people to get confused and say, "Oh, hey, I'm building ham radios and selling them out of my garage." That's not taxable. That's not commercial. Only if you were to have a license.
Well, or basically have a sign up and you're incorporated as Bo and Rocco's Buy a Radio kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Then there would be a excise license, a occupational license maybe, and then if you have employees and things, you're going to be caught up in the I.R.S. stuff as far as the withholding and all that garbage that they do to people that are incorporated technically. Even the definition of taxpayer in the Florida statutes is corporation, or a legal entities, I believe is the word they use, which I have this, we'll go through this little thing here I laid out here, give you guys a pretty good idea of what the court systems have said about this and how it has to be conducted, and what the Florida Constitution, the Florida Administrative Code, and the Florida statutes which support the Constitution of the state of what is allowed to be taxed, what the property appraiser is supposed to be taxing, how he's supposed to derive the, what's the word I'm looking for? How are you supposed to derive the, let's say, just value of the property that's being used for the taxable privilege?
Sure.
So, just sort of run down the list here. I have a case here from Gray versus Winthrop. It's a Florida case out of the 4th District Court of Appeals from the 1975. And it makes it perfectly clear that a state may not tax persons' property or interests which are not within its territorial jurisdiction and subject only to applicable and controlling federal law. State taxation is authorized, limited, and regulated by the state constitution and by state statutes enacted thereunder. And that comes from Gray versus Winthrop, Florida case. I don't know, should I give out the whole number? You think anybody's interested?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, that'd be Gray versus Winthrop, which is WINTHROP, and that's at 115 Florida 721,156 Southern Directory, which would be SO 270 at page 94, and that would be the 1970. I'm sorry, I think it's the 1978 is what I got here. Okay. Then we got another case here that comes from the Department of Revenue versus Brookwood Associates, out of the Florida District Court of Appeals, which is out of the Southern Directory, Section 184. And it states clearly that since the state can levy a property tax only on property having a situs in the state, provisions requiring all property within the state to be subject to taxation will not be construed to include property which has no situs. No situs for taxation within the state. So now we're going to cover situs here. When you look up the situs in the Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, it states a location or place of a crime or business, or the right or power to tax it. Situs of property for tax purposes is determined by whether the taxing state has sufficient contact with personal property sought to be taxed to justify in fairness the particular tax. And that is case law from town of Caddy versus Alexander Construction Company out of Wisconsin. You can look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. Situs, S-I-T-U-S. It's a Latin word for, I don't know what it means, but I guess it means what I just read.
Right.
So let me flip pages here, and then we're going to, I guess, get more into basically the state constitution now. Well, okay, I have another definition of situs called business situs, which is even more explicit to really give you an idea what situs is all about. The situs acquired for tax purposes by one who carries on business in the state more or less permanent in its nature. A situs arises when notes, mortgages, tax sale certificates, and the like are brought into the state for something more than a temporary purpose and are devoted to some business use there and thus become incorporated with the property of the state for revenue purposes. A situs arises where possession and control of property right has been localized in some independent business or investment away from the owner's domicile so that it is substantially used and the value primarily attached to it and becomes an asset of the outside business. And that's a state case. State versus Atlantic Oil Production Company out of Oklahoma. Now, Florida statutes, 212031. Tax on rental or license fee for use of real property. A1. It is declared to be the legislative intent that every person is exercising a taxable privilege who engages in the business of renting, leasing, letting, granting, or license for the use of any real property unless such property is used exclusively for dwelling units. Now we have the definition of taxpayer out of Florida Statutes 220.03. Means any corporation subject to the tax imposed by this code and includes all corporations for which a consolidated return is filed under Florida Statutes 220.131. Then there's another definition of taxpayer out of Florida Statutes 192.001. Taxpayer means the person or other legal entity in whose name an asset included in the agent of a timeshare period time holder. I don't know if I read it to make any sense. I'll do it one more time. Taxpayer means the person or other legal entity in whose name property is assessed, including an agent of a timeshare period time holder. Now we have the Florida State Constitution out of this is the 1885 Constitution, which is really clear here in the Section 16 out of Article 16. That property of all corporations, whether hereto or thereto incorporated, shall be subject to taxation unless such property is held and used exclusively for religious, scientific, municipal, educational, literary, or charitable purposes. Then I got a nice case here that even makes it more clear that taxing statutes and statutes conferring authority to impose taxes are to be strictly construed. That's Department of Revenue versus Brookwood Association out of Florida District Court of Appeals, 1st District. And that was the case I read off earlier, had a little bit of stuff. And that was a really good case. And another case called Loeb that's really good here in Florida that cuts through it. Now we're back into the Florida statutes again. This comes under the exemption chapter, which is Chapter 196. 196, 181, exemption of household goods and personal effects. There shall be exempt from all taxation to every person residing and making his or her permanent home in this state, household goods and personal effects. Now let me make this clear. There shall be exempt from taxation to every person residing or making his or her permanent home in this state, household goods and personal effects. Title to such household goods and personal effects can be held individually or by entities jointly or in common with others. Now we get to the Florida Administrative Code, 12D-7.022, exemption of household goods and personal effects. Here, this defines what household goods and personal effects are. Only household goods and personal effects of the taxpayer. Now remember, we're talking about taxpayers now, which are actually employed in the use of the serving of the creature comforts of the owner and not held for commercial purposes are entitled to the exemptions provided in Section 196, 181 Florida statutes. Creature comforts are things which give bodily comfort such as food, clothing, and shelter. Common commercial purposes include owning household goods and personal effects as stock and trade or as in furnishing and rental units. So, household goods and personal effects are to be exempt from taxation, and the Florida Administrative Code defines that as being creature comforts, which is defined as shelter. Now we go to the Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, and we look up the definition of shelter. In statutes relating to the provisions of food, clothing, and shelter for one's children, the term generally refers to a home with proper environments as well as protection from the weather. Now we're back into the Florida Statutes 196 Exemption Chapter .031, exemptions of homesteads. Every person who on January 1st has legal or equitable title, beneficiary title, or equity to real property in the state who resides thereon in good faith and makes his permanent home or her permanent home or permanent residence or the permanent residence of another or others legally or naturally dependent upon such person is entitled to exemption from all taxation. Now we got the Florida Constitution, Article 7, Section 3B, taxes, exemptions. They'll still be exempt from all taxation accumulated to every head of family residing in the state, household goods and personal effects valued by general law. So, I mean, the point I'm making is if you start looking around through the codes, as like Rod Class and these guys will tell you, it's all code pleading. The statutes make it pretty clear to any jerk-off that lives on a street corner, if you read this, it makes it pretty clear that they have no authority to be taxing the place that you live in.
Absolutely.
And I got a bunch more. I mean, I just go on and on with this stuff. They talk about exemption from ad valorem taxes for exempt entities. Oh, and here we got the Florida State Constitution, Article 7, Section 6A, which is almost verbatim of 196.031. Every person who has the legal or equitable title to real estate and maintains thereon the permanent residence of the owner or other legally or naturally dependent upon the owner shall be exempt from taxation thereon. The real estate may be held by legal, equitable title, or by entities jointly or in common as a condominium or indirectly by stock, ownership, or membership, presenting the owners or members appropriately interested in the corporation owning a fee. I hate reading these things, so sometimes the wording is so weird, you know. But when you read through this stuff, it's obvious. This is what I took to the property appraiser here in Orange County, and he took the property off the tax roll real fast.
Right. All this stuff is buried, and you're just bringing it to the light of day.
It took me 2 years to go through all this and put it together. You have to get the Constitution, you got to put the statute that's enacted from the Constitution, then the government code that puts the procedure in play of how they're supposed to interpret what the Constitution says. Yeah, and if you don't really have a lot of experience at reading this stuff, it can take you quite some time. Luckily, my background isn't technical, so I'm used to reading technical manuals and assembly manuals and schematics and things. So, and that still took me a while to even do this myself, you know. But the point I'm making is from reading this stuff, and then I got tons of case law here I can go through to spend probably another hour. It's pretty much making clear what ad valorem taxes apply to the calling and all that stuff, which we can get into that here. I just mainly wanted to hit just the basic laws. And then they have a lot of procedural stuff, like the homestead exemption stuff here in the Florida Administrative Code 12D-7013, homestead exemptions. The head of family occupying the second story of a building as his home, and the first story of the building as his business, is entitled to claim a homestead exemption on the building. Now, basically what that's telling you is homestead exemption only applies to someone who lives on the property that they have their business on. If you're living in a neighborhood someplace where you have a little 200-foot by 150-foot square lot with a 3-bedroom house and a garage and a swimming pool, you would never apply for homestead exemption there. From everything I'm seeing here, the property appraiser is not even supposed to be talking to you. But guess what? They do this to gain revenue, which makes it theft. If they're collecting money that they don't have any authority to collect, that's theft.
Exactly. And they're using the mails to do it. So, you know,
when you get ready to put your criminal complaint together, you can use the mail fraud, which is USC, I think 1341, Title 18, 1341, 1343, I believe. They're falsifying records, which comes under 2071 Title 18. They're creating fictitious obligations, and I believe that's 514 or 513. And then they're also creating false securities. And that comes on, that's 513. I get the two mixed up. 513, 514 are right together. One is false securities. The other one is creating fictitious obligations. And that's exactly what they're doing when they're putting property on the tax roll that ain't supposed to be there.
Okay, everybody, that's going to do it for part 5 on income tax, property tax, and tax swindle, tax fraud. In 2000, I think it was 2014 or 2016, we did the Summit of the Moors, and I laid out some information. So I'm going to close out here. However, attached to this particular video is the information that I delivered in the hotel during the Summit of the Moors. So y'all stay tuned for that, and also stay tuned for stay tuned for part 6 of the information that we're bringing out on video. I told you we're doing a series of videos. Keep in mind, our website is www.newdebtelimination.com. That's www.newdebtelimination.com, and for my free report, you go to www.tarhakadebtelimination.org. That's tarhakadebtelimination.org. And for those of you who have problems with debt, foreclosure, if you don't want to do your secure party and creditor, you're trying to get rid of your property taxes, you got student loans, child support, and all that stuff. You can call me directly right over at newdebtelimination.com. Look up top, you'll see my number is right there. Give me a shout and we can go to work. Now's the time to get out of debt. We got some heavy times coming ahead, so we need to get in our proper status in commerce and get your nationality straight and all of this good stuff. So I hope you all got something out of the information that we laid out for you in part 5. We'll be coming back at our future date, and we will be dealing with your bonds and all of that stuff. So y'all stay tuned, okay? Stay tuned for this next plug coming right up.
Okay, family, we're going to reconvene and bring up our next presenter. This is Brother Tarhaka Armana El Bey. He comes from Jacksonville, Florida, and Brother Tarhaka has been on the scene for quite a while, and many of you have tapped in and logged into many of his blog talk shows and a lot of the information that he presents. It's definitely all about 100% unequivocally about the liberation of our people, and we want to, allow Brother Tarhaka to really feed us a lot of the wonderful information that he's come across. And every time this brother comes across some new information, it's not even a day before he's putting it out and making sure that we get access and get hold to it. So if you all please give your undivided attention to Brother Tarhaka, and he's going to educate you all on some financial literacy.
All right. Before we get started, I got a question. If it's anybody in here now that's opposed to making money, will you raise your hand? Okay, making progress. The first thing I want to talk about is how is it that rich people is rich and they continue to be rich no matter what. They're rich, they just stay rich. They just keep getting richer and richer and richer. What are they doing that we are not doing? So what we're going to do is let's take a look at what they be doing first, okay? And then we'll get into how we can do some of these things too. First thing we're going to do is going to show you right quick what they be doing. This is exactly what goes on right here. We got income. We got expenses. We got assets. And we got liability. Now what the rich do is they have systems whereby they can create money out of thin air. For instance, what we would do on an average is we'd go to a bank and we'll, over a period of time, we'll deposit, about $10,000 in the bank. Okay? We find something that we want to invest in, we'll go to the bank and we'll get our $10,000 and we'll make the investment. But the rich don't do that. What they'll do is they'll take $10,000. They'll deposit it in that bank, but never will they ever go back to that bank and take them $10,000 and use the $10,000. What they're going to do is they're going to go to the bank and say, look, I got $10,000 in this bank. I need you to give me a $10,000 loan. I'm going to use my $10,000 as collateral. And what they're going to do is they're going to take that money, put it down in the asset section, and make those $10,000 go to work for them. But the difference between them and us is they're going to take a filter and put in between their income and their assets, and they're going to create a corporation. They're going to set up a trust. And what they're going to do is they're going to bleed off expenses. They're going to spend as much as they can. They're going to invest as much as they can, or tap that money in investments. And then what happens is they're taxed after they've had a good time. And that's the difference between them and us. We'll get our income, it'll come in. First thing we'll do, we'll take a look at the bills. We got to pay the rent, lights, water, and all that. But what has happened to us, especially if we're employed, is the government has already set it up where they have paid themselves first, even though we put in the energy, and then we are trying to make it down here to the asset section with savings, but we never make it. Because we was taxed before, where the rich was taxed after, because they was able to set up a barrier between their income and their assets, and that's one of the biggest secrets of the rich right there. That's a gigantic hole right there. They never use their own money, they use leverage, and they control between income and assets through a corporation. That corporation is held in the trust. They don't ever want to own anything. They always want to control everything through that corporation that's held by that trust, and they're taxed on what's left. You might see game shows on TV. Let's make a deal. What's Jeopardy? What's the one that Steve Harvey do?
Family Feud.
Okay. Well, you ever wonder where are they getting all of this money and all these cars and all this furniture and stuff to give to these people? Well, what these people are doing is they are donating the cash. They are investing in the cars and giving them cars away, and they're writing these things off because they are taxed after the fact. And we are taxed before the fact. Okay? So let's take a look at what goes on with us. One problem that we're having is we got to learn the difference between an asset and a liability. How many in here believe that your home is one of your biggest assets? Raise your hand. Now wait a minute now. You got a brand new Cadillac. That's got to be an asset, right?
That's a liability.
That's a liability. Now why is that a liability?
Because you're going to keep paying.
You mean to tell me I can't go to the gas station and tell the attendant that owned the gas station that he needs to give me some money so I can buy some gas to put in? I can't do that? Well, I had to put that down there as a liability.
That's right.
Now, if you go to the bank and you ask the bank, is my house a liability? The bank can tell you yes.
No,
they're not lying. It is. But we need to know, if they tell me my house is an asset, my next question should be, whose asset is it?
Right.
Now, if I'm paying the mortgage and I know that all assets puts money in my pocket, all liability takes money out of my pocket. So that means they'll have to have my mortgage listed in their asset column. Right? So they didn't lie to me. I just didn't ask the rest of the question. Okay, so what goes on with us if we go to work? Yeah.
I got a question. What does liability mean?
A liability?
Yes.
A debt. A liability is something that's not producing any income. If you got an automobile, you got to put tires on it, you got to put oil in it, you got to put gas on it, you certainly have to put armor all on it.
Insurance,
tag, insurance, driver license, everything associated with that, that's money coming out of the pocket. In other words, let's look at it like this right here. If I don't go to work, will my assets feed me, or will my liabilities eat me? So we got income coming in. We're going to say that we got $100. Okay. That's all we made this week. Right? $100. But what we're going to have to start doing, if we haven't already started doing this, is the first person or the first thing that goes in the asset section on your paper is your name. Because you're your biggest income producing asset. And out of every $100 or every dollar that you get, we're going to pay ourselves 10%. $10 in the asset section. Now, if we ain't made it to the bank, we'll get an envelope, take them $10, stick inside that envelope, write the word asset on that envelope. Every time you get paid, first person that's first thing that's going to get paid from the income is to the assets. You'll pay yourself first. You got to pay yourself. Don't even look at the light bill. Don't look at the rent. Don't look at the mortgage. Don't look at nothing. As soon as you get that paycheck, you bring it home, because right here, when you walk in the house with that paycheck, we're dealing with a choice. You're going to make a choice. When you get paid on Friday, you're making a choice to become rich or poor. And it's based on this basic system here. This is the basic financial sheet right here. Your income, your expenses, your assets, and your liabilities. Now, we don't have to worry about the liabilities, because we got income coming in. We got $100 coming in. We paid ourselves $10 out of every 100. So if you got $500, that's how much money got to go in asset section? $50. So you got $50. So now, as we accumulate this money, we get up to about what we say $200, $300, $400, $500. We're going to take this asset and we're going to put it in the bank in the biggest income producing interest acquiring situation that we can put it in, until we come to the conclusion of whatever else we're going to put this money in, because this got to be working. If you got a pocket with a wad of money in it, in your pocket, then you're in trouble, because this money got to be working. Because you paid yourself. If you paid yourself with this money, you got to put that money to work. It's never meant to be stagnated. Okay? Now, once we start doing this and we develop the habit of going from income to asset. Now, we already, if you're working on the job, you've already been taxed. Because understand, I made it against the law for you to pay yourself first by taxing you Social Security, income tax, and all this stuff. Okay? So we got to turn this thing around and start taking advantage of every bit of money that we have. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If you work on John's car, John give you a $20 bill, pay yourself out that $20 bill. If you put a paint Margaret's house down the street and she give you $250, pay yourself. That's the habit you're developing. Take that envelope, put that money in it. When you get to the bank, ask the bank people, what is the biggest, what account can I open to yield the highest amount of interest? We don't want no savings account. What you say?
Money market account.
Money market account. Let's open up the money market account. Now, the money market account is going to be fine until we get to a bigger income producing situation. But we always want to keep the money working. We never want to get in a position where we're going to start taking this asset money and start spending it, because we're in trouble. Now, whenever you spend some money, what do you think you're going to spend that money out of? If you've got to spend some money, what do you think you're going to take the money from to spend? And then out of that 10, I'm going to narrow that down to 3. And out of that 3, I'm going to pick 1. You make a much sound investment every single time. I'm not going to let anybody come to me and say, well, look, I got some houses I need you to look at. It's 3 of them. Okay, well, I'm putting them 3 down on the list, because I got to go through 100, narrow it down to 10, down to 3, and out of those 3, I'm going to select 1 to invest in, because the one I invest in is going to be the one that's what? It's going to generate income, because I'm going to use this asset capital to invest in that property. Okay? All right. Now, there's another system whereby we get paid. The money comes in here. And what we try to do is we try to handle the expenses. But we never make it to the asset section. The rich come in here and go straight to the asset section. The reason why, most of our lives we've been taught to go to school, get a good education, and get a good job. So we got work here, small business here, big business here, and investments here. The rich concentrates on investments. If you got a job, you got to be an employee, investor. If you own a small business of any kind, you got to be a small business owner plus investor. Because if you just have a job, you're not going to make it. And the reason why we're not going to make it is because we don't have any money. All we have is debt. Now, if you take a $1 bill and you look across the top, it'll clearly tell you, it's got it up here too, Federal Reserve note. Look up the definition of note, and we found out what that is, and that's a promise made between the person that created this and the guy that signed it. That's a promise between them two. So, but what we're doing is we're using this debt in order to try to survive. So what we got to do, we got to get rid of the debt. So we're going to take debt and transform it into money. And when we do that by going from income to assets. And from asset to investment. That's how we do that. Okay? Anybody got any questions so far? What we're doing is we're taking money and making money work for us. We're learning how to stop working for money and learn how to make money work for you in every situation. If a little old lady tell you, look, I need you to help carry my groceries home for me, I'm going to give you $5. Yes, ma'am, I'll carry groceries for you. Here's the $5 bill. What's the first thing you got to do?
Take 50 cents.
You got to pay yourself. What we're doing now is we're developing the habit of doing this. So don't run in the house trying to put stuff down so I can't find the light bill. Oh, look for that envelope with that money in it first. Find out what that. Put that money in there, then put it back. Okay, now we can look at the light bill. Because if you do that long enough, you'll find out, oh my God, I got a big stack of stuff. I got to do something with it. Of course, go to the bank and get the what? Money market account. Right? Because we got to keep the money working. The money can't be sitting there accumulating no dust. Because it ain't doing that. Not if you're supposed to be employed. When you go to work for your employee, he's interested in you working. He wants to know that you're working. He don't want to see you just sitting there, standing there doing that. Because he's invested in you, he wants you working. So you got to make the money do the same thing. Yeah.
The money market account? What kind of account is that? How is that?
You want to explain that to him, bro?
Is it kind of like a CD or something?
There's different instruments in money market. And depending on the instrument, that's how much interest you can earn on that. So.
Oh, okay.
All right. Now you got, when you get ready to go to the bank, or when you go to the bank, tell them that you need to speak to the bank president, somebody, to find out what the bank has to offer you, what type of accounts that they have, and what's the biggest, what account accumulates the most interest, because we're putting the money to work. See, we're stopping our biggest income producing asset from working. We're going to start making this stuff work for us. You see?
I was going to give them like an example, like the CD, certificate of deposit. That's when like you lend like the money that he said is your asset. You put that in there, and like banks will borrow that from you for a certain period of time till maturity, and you'll earn a little bit of money off of that. But you have to keep it in there to earn that.
Right, can't touch it.
You can't touch it.
Okay.
All right. Now, once you accumulate this money inside your asset section, the money is working, everything's going good. Now we have to start looking for investments. Part of time of your day should be spent on looking over where can I put this money to work next? What can I do next? You might want to look at real estate. You might want to look at urban geoponics or gardening and farming and stuff like that, that you can get a return on investment. See, the rich look on rate of return on investment. That's what we look at. We got one guy, his name is, he was a taxi cab driver up in New York City. His name is Wade Cook. And he got into the real estate business And what he was doing is he had these people looking for these houses. That was the only thing they're supposed to do. Find these houses, let me know about these houses, and tell me how much money I can make off of these houses by Friday. But a lot of these guys would call and say, man, I found this beautiful house, man. I mean, this thing is what? Man, on these acres of land and all that. He said, you might want to live in this house. He said, man, I don't want to live in nothing. I'm fine where I am. Tell me how much money can I get for this house by Friday. Because the only thing that he was interested in is making sure that asset capital is working. That's all. Now, if you got a rental property, and there's someone living in that rental property and you're receiving income from that rental property, then that rental property should be listed in the asset section. If somebody moves out of that property, then you got to hurry up and get somebody else in there. Otherwise, you're going to have to put it where? In the liability section. Every dollar that you spend in expenses and stuff, get the receipts from it and write that amount in the expense section. And at the end of the month, you're able to look at your incomes, you're able to look at your expenses, you're able to look at your assets, and you still have your liabilities right there. So now if you got a big pile of receipts and amounts of money that you've written into the expense section, you know you got to do something. Because this thing is getting out of control. So you're going to have to tighten up your belt and you have to reduce the amount of money that's going into the expense section. That's where we master the art of learning the difference between our needs and our wants. We got a lot of people that have a hard time with that. You want to, because see what we're doing here is we are developing a habit. And this is what rich people do. They develop the habit of managing their wealth. And then they're writing, they're actually creating money out of thin air. We'll say if you get a property, we're going to pay $100,000 for it. We got 400 acres of land on this square right here. And we got a house right here on the corner. It's on the corner lot. Okay? So that's a $45,000 home. Because we're going to sell that there for 45 grand. And we only invested $100,000 in the whole thing. But we're going to break this thing up in 4 parts of $100,000 apiece. We invested $100,000, so what we did was created $345,000 out of thin air. That's what the rich do. And we did not use our $100,000 that we had in the bank. We went to the bank and got a loan of $100,000 using our $100,000 as collateral. And we're paying the bank back a little bit at the time, and we want to keep it like that until tax season gets here. Why? Because we got $300,000 and $100,000 tied up with banks on payment. So we can't get taxed until what? After the fact. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you brought up taxes. One, is it true that doing your taxes is actually a setback? And number 2 is, for those of us who have who are on a corporate plantation, along with your W-2, does the 1099 help you like boost your revenue as far as like what taxes you would pay out?
No, you don't get no boost up in there. What you got? That's why I'm showing you this right here. See, what you can do with your employer, you can actually set up your estate and cancel the taxation over there. But we want to go beyond that. We want to get into a position where we simply set up a corporation, and all purchases that we make, like regular stuff that we make, is not purchased by us, it's purchased by the corporation. Right, okay. And it just so happened that the corporation is held by a trust. So now that we got that structure set up, we can do all kind of stuff now. We can invest, we can spend as much money as we want, we can take money and give it to charity. And we can give money. I can give money to these guys' organization, give money to Urban Geoponics, and what? Write it off, and then give the government the receipts. Well,
Money's still not working for you properly?
yeah, but this is why we're creating the system. We want to make our money outperform inflation.
But in a bank, it's not going to outperform inflation, from my experience.
That's just a holding tank.
3%.
That's just a holding. See, if I fill this glass up with water, let it sit in there, and it just be sitting there. But if I drink the water, that's when it starts doing the most good. But we're gonna have somewhere to put the water, so we put it just sit in there for a minute a week. That's what I'm talking about. It's just a holding tank. We're not. See, we're putting in a leverage situation. You can do the same thing if you got, let's say we invested in 10 or 15 lots prior to them putting houses on. So we have money tied up. It's going different places. We can take some of that money, market crash, no problem. None of it didn't get on me because the system I got, he could be investing in the stock market. But he got other investments other places. So he lose $100,000 over there. No problem. It wasn't none of his money anyway. He got a loan, got from somebody else. And he's using other income investment assets that's producing income that can pay for that. See, you're not owning anything. You're controlling everything, and you are moving toward freedom.
You teacher.
That's what it's all about. Freedom. We got to break free from the money trap. We got to control the income. We got to control the expenses. We got to learn the difference between assets and liabilities. And we got to take these little institutions there and make them work for us if we're going to use these institutions. But we got to keep the cash flow going. Yeah.
Do you have any information on the security of foreign banks? Because I know I heard something about Morocco is paying upwards of 12% on their deposits.
Well, I don't have any personal information on foreign banks, but what we're concentrating on here lately, since we've been doing this, is we're looking at other nations' currency. Because we got a lot of one of the hottest investments today is investing in money.
Volatile too.
And making money earn money. That's the name of the game. Take the money and make that money make money. But the number one thing to always remember is you get out of the work. Put that money to work. Make that money work for you. Don't work for money. Because every dollar you get, if I give you a $1 bill, you got to go to the store and get change. Because you got to pay yourself a quarter. We just want to develop the habit. That's all. Yeah.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
What Tarhaka is talking about, to elaborate on what he's demonstrating. For example, if you automate paying yourself first, that's something you alleviate from doing. And if you do a 401k that's pre-taxed, that's your 10% automatically going to your 401k account. That's part of that tax later thing, and it's yielding you money. You can go to a bank. Instead of keeping it in a regular savings account, you put it in a money market account that'll give you more return versus, 10% or not even 10% or 10 cents every 6 months based off of, $600 that you have. Also, it's performing for you versus just sitting in your savings account. So you got to be able to take the little bit amount of money that you do have and make it work for you versus just keeping the same routine and ending up with zero at the end of the month. You got to play by the numbers. If you're not structured, it's a science. If you play by the numbers, if you know what your debt ratio is and you know what you're making, then you know what you have left over. That's your wealth. After you paid your bills, after you paid yourself first, paid your bills, and you have a savings and something invested, that means that you're going to have something later on down the line versus what you're just getting from a job or your company. You can also, if you want to do something independently of a bank with the savings, you look at money market, you just simply Google money market accounts. ING, Edward Jones, you can look at those places as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Real quick, just so I can understand this clearly, that example that you gave with the 4 banks, right?
Yeah.
Was that, you only use $400 to do that, or was it $1,600 that you used to do that?
Just 400. We just want to, because I'm trying to make this palatable and digestible for everybody. We got a bank. The only thing we're going to do is just make deposits until we reach $400. All right, after we get $400 in there, now we're ready to get a loan. Take it over there, put it in there, just like you said, put it in an interest-bearing account until we get enough money to put it to work. But anywhere that money's sitting, we want to work it. No matter where it's at, it's got to be worked. Yes, ma'am.
Does it matter, or is it really significant that you make a deposit until you reach it? What if you just put $400 in there? Does it?
No, we want to.
You have to.
Yeah, we want to build. We want to show these people that we are deposit. That we're making an effort. We don't want to just take $400, just put it in there, come back tomorrow. Yeah, I need $400. No. If I was the bank president, I'm gonna say, well, you got the $400 for.
Money trail.
Yeah, I need it. That's right. We need to see you being done stuff. Okay, let's take a look. We'll recap one more time now. Let's make sure we got this right. Okay, we get paid. Job. Our income come in here, expenses here, asset here, liabilities here. What happens with us is when we get paid, we're going to thinking about all the things that we're going to have to pay. Everybody who had to get paid and all the things we got to buy groceries. I got to stop over here and put some gas in the car. I got to do this, I got to do that. I promised so-and-so and then we're going to help them with the birthday party. All these things right here. And what happens is we come through here, we get tangled up down there right here, and we make it down here, and our income goes where? Out the expense section. That's what happens. And we never get a chance to pay ourselves. That's the hang-up. When you get paid and come here, it is at this point we do what? We have a choice. That's the breaking point right there. Every single paycheck you get, every $20 bill you get, every $100 you make from somewhere, it's the breaking point right here. This is when you decide to become rich or poor. Pay yourself first. Well on your way. Every time. Just develop the habit. Don't forget to pay yourself first. That's the key. And then we're going to start concentrating on going from income to assets and from assets to investments. That's the name of the game. That's the name of the commerce game. That's how to beat the game. You're going from income to investments. Income, assets, investments. Your name should be the first thing in that asset section because you're your biggest income producing asset. And if your asset don't go to work, you don't get paid, right? Okay. All right. This concludes my, unless anybody else got any questions.
One more. How long did you think how long would that take to do that whole process?
Which one? You talking about the
when
banks?
you get to the 400.
Well, it depends on you. You can make it as realistic if you want. You can do it every 2 weeks. You can make a deposit every week. You can make payments on that loan once a month. While that 400 sit over there in bank number 2 until you pay that $400. You can tell them I want to pay $75 a month on that.
And you don't think that even though you have collateral, you don't think the bank is gonna, look at you and say, I don't want to loan you the money, even though you built it up like you did. So is it like
you're not using their money, you're using your own. You got $400.
Yeah, that's right. That's the collateral. Okay, I see.
And that's 4 separate banks, right?
I see.
Yeah.
You're using 4 separate banks.
Yeah, 4 separate banks.
Yeah, that's a secured loan. I keep forgetting about that word.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's an excellent approach to building credit. People like to think the only thing you need to do is get fiat in your pocket. Credit is a valuable tool in today's society. That'll give you a relationship with 4 different institutions. So in the future, banks have their own credit report agencies. So you'll have good relationships with those 4 different institutions as well. So when you get ready to do anything, just like Dr. said, you'll get a better financial standing in those banks' eyes. So it'll put you in a better position.
Now another reason why we're doing this is because later on, we're going for the big kahuna. We don't walk in the bank and say, hey, here's me. I need you to break me off 200 grand, man. Give me $200,000. And you already know you're going to put it, you're going to invest in something that's going to yield a return on that investment, and you're going to make your small payments back to the bank, and you're well on your way, and you should never be broke again. Because you have a system, real simple, that you're using, and you have developed the habit to be rich because you're constantly making a choice every time you get some money. You're making a choice. You're choosing. See, poor people, in a lot of cases, and broke people, they choose to be broke. Child, it's Cat and them birthday. I told her I'm gonna make the cake.
What kind of cake?
I got it. It's because it's her birthday. You know I got it. And Willie and them finna join the little league, and they want me to be a sponsor. Did you ask Willie what's the return on investment? we got to bring this thing into control and start dealing with it, because once we start doing this, then we will find out that we got more money left at the end of the month than the other way around. See, in a lot of cases we got, and when the end of the month comes, we got a whole lot of money, but we ain't got that much money. But by exercising this kind of control, then you discover that you always got cash flow. Something happens, boom, you can handle it, always. I was explaining this to a friend of mine, and they were looking at it and saying, you know, it really looks good. How do I know it'll work? I went in the room and come back with an envelope like right there, and it had asset roller. I said, open up, peek in it. I said, don't touch me, but peek in it. She opened up, peek in it. I said, get it back. Come back, I put it back up. I come back, I said, what you think now? What, do I have to sign something? I said, no. How do I get started? Yeah. And then you take the cash until you get to the bank, put it in the bank, put it to work. Just make sure that it's working. Stop working for money, make money work for you. Anybody got another question about this?
I do. I have a question.
What?
My question is, when doing the deposits to all the 4 banks, your interest that you will be paying is going to be less than money that your money is making in the money market account. Is that correct?
Well, I was
just asking about the interest versus the money market payment that you'll be yielding.
Could you let the people know how to order the DVDs? You have some.
You go DVDs right here on the table.
Right, I know that, but people watching live on stream, they're asking how to order.
Hey!
Yeah.
Yeah, just contact me, Tarhaka Monterey Bay at area code 904-303-9061 before 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know y'all heard that 1,000 times, but I said it live today.
One more time, you went too fast.
904-303-9061 before 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we got it. Yes, sir.
Is it feasible on a smaller scale to do all 4 banks at the same time?
Nah. One at a time. Because what we're doing is we're building credibility step by step. Because we're going to come back in the future and we ain't need people for $500,000. So therefore, we want to be squeaky clean. We want to be the Pope's nephew.
Not.
You know, you want to, yeah. So what we're doing is we're showing a credible standing in the beginning, and we have money in the bank. We got some collateral, and we are putting our money to work. And if we get a substantial amount of money, if you get $20,000 or $25,000 accumulated, that's a $25,000 loan right there. Using your $25,000 as collateral. Don't ever use your money. Use their money. If you got $500,000 in the bank, you go to the bank, I need a loan of $500,000. You understand? Always. It's called leverage. Don't never use your stuff. Always use their stuff, because you got a thing called taxes. So you want to use their money, and you want to make them monthly payments. We ain't paid nothing off. We still paying on it. So that's after tax. Any more questions before I stop?
Right here.
It's the last one.
Okay.
And I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, I believe that this system is going to crumble at some point, this economic system, the way that money is flowing.
Yeah,
Are you ever concerned about that, or what happens to our money at that point? And
What money? You ain't got none. What I told you?
Money
This
don't
debt.
exist.
This is y'all.
Okay.
We trying to get at it. We ain't getting in, we getting at it. Because see, if you don't do something to get out of it, then you're gonna be in trouble. But we want to get in a position where we can have a because if right now Brother Diallo had $100,000, how big you think that farm will be? He have a fleet of tractors. So the dollar could crash all in water. We go to his house and eat, right? we got to use what we got. Just take this little fiat turn around.
Comment, and this is related to her.
Yeah.
As long as you have a way to continually bring in the cash flow, so to speak,
Mhm.
you can always put that in hard assets such as gold and other currencies. It's going to continue to come in. So once you keep the system established first, then you'll be able to put it in cryptocurrencies, gold, silver, other things. You know what I mean? To generate. Hard.
Right. Gotcha.
The main thing that we have to be concerned about and never forget, food, air, and water. That's the real currency. But we are playing with this stuff right here and making this stuff get us in a better position to have more of that for ourselves as a nation and move toward freedom. It's all about freedom. And to have the food and water at the same time. If there are no more questions, I'm done.
Everybody good? Good. Everybody good? Good. All right. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome, my brother.
I'll see you later. Another hand for Tarhaka, please. Don't forget his show is on Blog Talk. It's on Facebook. Friend him on Facebook. He's been banned from Facebook because all the friends and all the stuff call him out to set the up. Now, we're going to bring up the next sister who is she's going to give us some more information in relation to what this whole thing is about. She is the Amma, the mother. Her name is Abundance Child.
You got the regular sword? That go with the projectors?
Hey, brother.
Hey.
You got to jump. I got my my hard disk. I could put it on your computer. You got PowerPoint on there? Can I just email it to you real quick? You got internet here, right?
I don't have mine. Here, put it on when you jump down.
Oh, that's. Yeah, thank you.
Hey. Pause it. Okay, take the battery out.